Hey guys, welcome back to another video. So today we're going to be talking about capacity related to this new non-domiciled CDL rule. If you're sick of hearing about non-domiciled CDLs, well, I am at the mercy of the news and what is happening in the trucking industry. And lately, everything has been about this rule. So today we're going to talk about capacity because I am noticing that there are two distinct groups forming. One group is saying nothing is going to change regardless of the rule. The second group is expecting the change to be immediate. So let's break down how exactly capacity will decrease because of this new regulation. Because while yes, capacity is going to decrease, it's not going to be as immediate as some might think. Ready? Let's go. So obviously the big question at the center of all of this is enforcement. Is this rule being enforced? And if so, how is it being enforced? And number two, what is it going to do to capacity? Or more specifically, what is the timeline like for capacity to leave? So we're going to start at the top. Now, the most obvious enforcement would, of course, come from the state level, because when this rule was published, it was specifically written that states must pause all issuance or renewals of non-domiciled or limited term CDLs until that state can come into compliance with the new requirements outlined in this rule. And it seems like pretty much all states have complied with this. They have paused all issuance or renewal of non-domiciled CDLs. At least I have not heard of any big instances where states are still issuing non-domiciled CDLs, except for one from a comment under one of the videos where this person said that they know of someone who was able to get a renewal. But from what I have seen, pretty much all states are in compliance right now. But going back to capacity, even though pretty much all states are complying, that doesn't mean that all of these non-domiciled CDL holders have officially lost their CDL. After all, states have to do kind of an internal audit to figure out who is still eligible to hold a non-domiciled CDL and who is no longer eligible. So there are folks out there who are still driving with a CDL that might be non-domiciled, but it's still valid because it hasn't been downgraded. But just because it hasn't been downgraded yet doesn't mean that downgrades are not happening. They're happening everywhere all the time. The downgrades happen more often than not because a CDL is now expired, and of course there is no possibility to renew, or the medical card expires. As we have talked about, medical card expires, the CDL automatically gets downgraded, no option to renew. Or in the case of Washington State, something that is interesting is the fact that a group of folks received a letter from Washington State saying that there is an issue with their CDL. And when those folks went to the Washington State DMV, all of their CDLs got hole punched and they were offered the option of getting a regular Class C license. Just today, Mike, a gentleman who is in our YouTube community who sends me a lot of articles, sent me another article today. So thank you, Mike. And this article detailed the experience of one driver who was trying to renew a non-domiciled CDL. This is from CDL Life, and this is what it says. Truck driver Vivek Sharma says that he was denied his CDL renewal just last week at a California DMV. There, the employees explained to him that only U.S. citizens and green card holders can renew the CDLs at this time. True. Sharma says he has been in the U.S. legally for the last decade seeking political asylum. He says he has been driving trucks for 8 years under a work visa, and that his final court date case regarding his asylum is scheduled for 2026. Sharma says that without his CDL, he will have to start over in a new career and will have to stop sending money home to his family in India. So this is according to CDL Life, and this is basically the experience I have been hearing about the California DMV. They are not renewing or issuing any non-domiciled CDLs unless you have proof that you are a citizen or you have proof that you are a permanent resident in the United States. So downgrades are definitely happening. But again, going back to capacity, what about the very large group of people who might no longer qualify to hold a non-domiciled CDL under the new rule, but their CDL is not yet expired, so it's not subject to renewal. Their medical card is not expired, so their CDL is not going to get downgraded. And the states are still auditing their internal systems, so they don't know who is and isn't eligible for a non-domiciled CDL. So what about those folks? Well, obviously those folks are still driving, and that's where a different type of enforcement comes in that could have an effect on capacity. Now, recently, FreightWaves released an article titled "Insurance Companies Likely to Take Hard Stance on Non-Domiciled CDLs." So I don't know if you guys remember, a few weeks ago when this rule just came out, I had been in contact with several folks who are in the insurance sector for trucking, and they have been telling me that insurance carriers are looking to stop insuring non-domiciled or limited term CDL holders. Well, I guess I wasn't the only one who heard this, because Craig Fuller spoke to an insurance executive who basically told him that yes, it seems like insurance carriers are going to implement a policy that is going to prevent the hiring of non-domiciled CDL holders within the next year. Now, from the standpoint of the insurance companies, it makes complete sense. After all, the rule very clearly states that if a state becomes aware that a non-domiciled CDL holder no longer is eligible under the new rules, the state is required to downgrade that CDL. Now, insurance companies, they focus on risk, obviously, and the risk of insuring a driver whose CDL can become invalidated in real time without notice, pretty much, is a risk that they do not and will not want to take. Now, where does this whole mentality of insurance come from? You know, where they wear suspenders with a belt, just like I do? Well, bring in the nuclear verdicts. Just yesterday, Overdrive released an article saying that non-domiciled CDL drivers are a nuclear verdict waiting to happen. In the article, Overdrive interviewed Gregory Reed. He's a partner at Hanson Bridget, which is a law firm with experience representing trucking and transportation clients. Now, Reed put it very simply. I'm going to quote him here. This rule will have a near immediate, significant impact on the trucking and logistics industry. Basically, carriers who employ or contract with non-domiciled or limited CDL holders are at risk now, considering that this final rule, quoting him again, casts doubt on the legitimacy of the entire licensing system, increasing risk to those companies that work with such drivers. In simple terms, if, God forbid, a crash happens and the driver is a non-domiciled CDL holder, plaintiffs' attorneys would likely argue that logistics and trucking companies are now on notice that non-domiciled CDL holders may be operating unlawfully and are insufficiently qualified. And of course, insurance companies, they're not stupid. They understand that this is a possibility, and this is why they will not risk insuring a non-domiciled CDL holder, because they have seen the history of how nuclear verdicts turn out, and they don't want to be one of those insurance companies that ends up paying out an obscene amount of money. Basically, everyone is guarding their wallets. Now, insurance companies are a big one in terms of enforcement of this new rule, but insurance is not the only other enforcer, right? Other than the government on the state level or the federal level. There's also the carrier. Now, this is a smaller enforcer, but carriers are now encouraged to look at their hiring practices and audit pretty much everyone they employ or contract with that has a non-domiciled CDL. And they're also encouraged to limit the use of drivers with a limited term CDL, at least until their CDLs are confirmed or renewed, which is going to take some time as states are trying to do an internal audit, as I understand, and also trying to comply with the new federal requirements. And finally, of course, we cannot forget about brokers, but this is where we get on rocky ground. With this whole broker liability case front and center, brokers might be at risk as well. FreightWaves stated, and I quote, "Freight brokerages utilizing motor carriers known to hire non-domiciled CDL holders could potentially face legal culpability. Plaintiffs' attorneys may target brokers as well as carriers in lawsuits involving accidents with non-domiciled CDL drivers. So the expectation, theoretically as well as logically, is that brokers are now going to start checking who is transporting their load. Is it a non-domiciled CDL holder, or is it a full CDL? I don't know, even full-term CDL. I don't know what it's called. Now, this is where the shaky ground comes in, because if brokers really stop selling loads out of fear that they might be held liable if a non-domiciled CDL holder gets into a crash, if they start checking and rejecting drivers with non-domiciled CDLs, that would be quite a capacity shakeout before those CDLs even get downgraded. However, in order to ensure that they're using someone who does not have a non-domiciled CDLs, of course, the brokers would then have to start checking everyone, full-term CDLs as well as limited-term CDLs. And this is where the question comes in, because I know we all have a big problem with a carrier vetting tool like Highway that kind of goes overboard with the background checking, right? To the point where it's already infringing on people's privacy. I would love to hear your thoughts on this particular issue with brokers now enforcing this new rule by checking who is transporting the load, because again, double-edged sword. Anyway, the point is capacity is leaving, but it's more of a trickle. It's not like a gush out of the market. And the reason for this is because a lot of people who might not be eligible under the new rule still have a valid CDL. It has not been downgraded yet. So they keep driving while they can. But the other types of enforcement that have nothing to do with the government, those could actually speed up the process of a capacity shakeout. At least that's what I'm seeing. Anyway, guys, would love to hear your thoughts on this. Thank you for joining and watching, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your week. See you in the next video.